Hey everybody, welcome, welcome to Hidden Horror. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate that. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Hidden Horror. You guys, when I tell you I am so frustrated, ever since the April 9th, 2025 hearing where they went over all of the motions, the hearing was, as I said, a little shocking, a little disappointing. And, I've been thinking about a lot of things with this Bryan Kohberger case in Idaho 4. We're getting so far from actually finding the killers of the Idaho 4. We've wasted so much time. Now I look back and I'm thinking from the onset, this case has been tainted. It's tainted. It's so messed up. It's like I have all these feelings, frustration, just the misdirection, all of the lies. We have been lied to so much in this case. It's almost, I don't want to say it's a common habit in this case, but, I can almost curse at the level of how far this is going. I'm going to tell you now that, first off, I don't know who killed the Idaho 4. I have no idea. I've seen a lot. I've researched, I've studied, I have investigated this case. And sadly, I can't say, I know this person did it. I can tell you, I want to know who the DNA for the 3 unknown male mixture that was found under Madison Mogen's fingernail clippings. I want to know, who does that DNA belong to? What 3 males? I can tell you, I want to know, who does the blood on the handrail, the unknown male DNA blood, who does that belong to? And I also want to know the blood on the glove, that unknown male DNA. I want to know, who does that belong to? I don't care that it wasn't processed. I want to know. I know from common sense, if they have the suspect, the perpetrator that they're saying is Bryan Kohberger, that he did this, you can't tell me that that's his blood with no certainty. So I want to know, who does all of this other DNA belong to? I am kind of stunned that all of the evidence is problematic. From the car to the IgG, what was the process? What was the chain of custody? Why did you use an unauthorized lab? Why were the 2 other labs not able to figure out who this DNA belonged to, let alone when the FBI stepped in and did what they did? It's going back, in my opinion, to the processes, to the practices of the FBI with that IgG, and now with the AT&T records. I am going to show you today what I have gathered, what I have pieced together, because the April 9th, 2025 hearing with Judge Hippler, it set me to feel unsettled because in the arena of experts, we have Cy Ray and his two affidavits and what he's alleging, what he feels has happened. And then when we get to court, this unfolds and it's basing it on the 7-day window. And again, Cy Ray already said there's another way to get these records. And this is what's frustrating because I went back because it was bothering me. It's been bothering me. And I've done the videos. You can go on the Hidden Horror Facebook page and check out the videos with Cy Ray, his affidavits, what happened in court with Judge Hippler and Ann Taylor. I went back to the PCA of Brett Payne. And I'm hoping that my understanding is wrong, because this means that there is a tremendous lie. Either Brett Payne's PCA is full of lies, or Brett Payne's I can't even say his testimony, because Brett Payne's testimony at the hearing in May of 2024 is consistent with the PCA. It's consistent with what he said happened in the PCA, how he didn't have any experience reading the records, reviewing the records, putting all of that mapping together. He relied on the FBI agent, Special Agent Balance. That's what he testified to. That's what he wrote in the PCA. Only until he's cross-examined by the prosecution, because he was put on for the defense for Ann Taylor. Does she bring up, well, did you know they didn't get the records? But his PCA is saying that he did. Brett Payne is testifying in court in May of 2024 that he got the records, that he saw the records. He handed the records over to Special Agent Balance because he wasn't familiar. It wasn't his specialty. He didn't have experience reviewing those records, and he relied on the FBI for their assistance, their support. He said that Special Agent Balance was there at the Moscow Police Department. They relied on this help. And he reviewed the records. And when he reviewed the first set of records, because they asked for a 48-hour window from November 12th, 2022 to November 14th, 2022 of Bryan Kohberger cell phone records. Once those returned, they later went and asked for all the records from the starting date when Bryan Kohberger started his AT&T account. I believe it was June the 23rd of 2022. I will read the exact date in here. They went back and they asked AT&T for all of Bryan Kohberger's cell phone records data. And they were also provided with that the same day as the records for the 48-hour window. And then they wanted everything from the start of when he began his cell phone account with AT&T, which, yes, is June 23rd, 2022, up to the present day, which was December 23rd, 2022. Someone has to be lying. Either all of the work that Brett Payne did, the affidavits, the requests, the return of the affidavits with the records from AT&T for Bryan Kohberger's cell phone ending in 8485, 8458, or the prosecutor, she's lying. She's lying to Judge Hippler. It can't be both. You cannot have created all of these records, reviewed the records, put in the maps, the driving, the location data, all of that from the records, and then later, fast forward, almost 2.5 years later, say you don't have any of these records, that you never received them. Somebody's lying, and I'm going to show you right now. Cyray is right. If the PCA is true, because why would they turn around and ask for the records from the beginning where he first got his AT&T phone from June 23rd, 2022 to the present day, which was December 23rd, 2022, if the initial request, the 48-hour window, didn't come in? It doesn't even make sense. They're lying. And when I say they, the prosecutor, this is why Ann Taylor, she cannot wait until the trial begins. She needs to depose Special Agent Balance, because this is his workup. This is his write-up. This is his review, his investigation into these records, his review, his analysis of the cell phone data. And I learned one other thing also. They were able to request a special, I have to get the name of it because I'm not familiar with any of this. When they got the first return and they requested the second return, in the request of the second return, they asked for something else. It's called a pin register / trap and trace on Bryan Kohberger's 8458 phone. And that was to determine if Bryan Kohberger surveyed the victims, stalked the victims, and his contact with any of the victims. They're able to look through text messages, voicemails. They're able to see his transactions, his activity. And this is why there's a problem. If they couldn't find anything on the cell phone, going back to Bryan Kohberger's records from June 23rd, 2022, up until December 23rd, 2022, further, when they searched his house or apartment, his car, and his job, they found nothing. No connection to the victims. What are we doing here? What are we doing? It's wrong. They couldn't find a connection. They couldn't find any evidence. Now the prosecutor stands as if they are unaware of any of these records. But I'm going to show it to you today. It will not just be my words. No, that's not sufficient. That's not documenting. That's not evidence. I'm going to show it to you today. And we're going to gain this understanding together that there is a tremendous lie. It's either Everything in the PCA through these pages we're going to review, it all was made up and it was a lie, which I don't believe it. I don't think Special Agent Balance from the FBI, I don't think he lied at all. I don't think Brett Payne lied at all in this PCA. And when he testified in May of 2024 in front of Judge John Judge, I don't think he lied then. But April 9th, 2025, the prosecutor gets up there and she says it again, just as well as she said it in May of 2024, as if these records were never obtained. Then how did these records, did this account, did this mapping occur if this was all a lie? How? How? Where did the information come from? And why would Special Agent from the FBI Balance lie about it all? I don't think he lied. I don't think Brett Payne lied. I don't think Cy is lying because he has the experience as an expert. So that leaves you, the state of Idaho, the prosecution team. How do you think Brett Payne was able to request, to submit a request for these search warrants? He testified that even the written words, how to request, what to request, came from what he said was people that assisted him, mainly and in particular, Special Agent Balance. He's not lying. Somebody's lying, but I don't think it's him. And we're going to go over it right now. It is enough. This is so it brings me back to something that I read in the beginning of this case. Ethan Chapin's parents, Ethan's dad, something that he said in the very beginning and how they were not going to have any involvement in the prosecution of the case, going to any of the court hearings, any of the proceedings. They didn't want any part of it. But his dad had said something that always stood out to me. I read it in an article, and it was really to the investigation. It was as if he knew this was going to be a total mess and that maybe justice would not be served. It would not be blind. And it's coming every day back. This recounting of the thoughts of Ethan's dad, it rings in my mind. This is scary business. Let's get started. So, what I've done, the PCA, the probable cause affidavit of Brett Payne, I have shared it on the Hidden Horror Facebook page. If you want to read it, it's posted there for you. I'm going to pull it up online because it's easier for me to enlarge it this way so I can share it as we go through it. I wish I could be spending my time as it relates to the murders of Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Zaina. I wish I could be spending my time investigating who killed them. I wish I was taking this time to look into the evidence, to look at possible potential suspects. There are people, very bad people, out free that have killed these 4 students, these 4 college students. And they're getting away with this. Partly because misinformation, partly because they have targeted Bryan Kohberger, and the focus has simply only been on him, only investigating him. No real effort, no real work, no real police resources have been put into finding out if there was someone else or others. They didn't process a lot of the evidence. We don't hear about the tire impression. We don't hear about the shoe impression, the shoe print, the latent print. And we don't hear about all this other male DNA. And I wish I could be looking into that. But I've spent so much of my time dismantling this case from an evidence perspective because they have botched this case. Let's go. We got work to do. So I want to share a picture really quickly of Brett Payne. Brett Payne is primarily the officer in charge. He is the head, the lead detective. He's a corporal with the Moscow Police Department. And he has pretty much led this case in taking steps to obtain primarily what our focus is the AT&T records from Bryan Kohberger's cell phone. He didn't interpret or review or analyze those records, but he requested those records. And he worked with FBI Special Agent Balance, who did the leg work in the analysis of the records that were obtained. So we're going to go over now to the PCA. So switch over to that. We're not going to go over the whole PCA. We're only going to zone in on what we're talking about right now, which is the records for Bryan Kohberger's cell phone that ended in 8458. We're going to page 12. We're already here. If you want to review the entire PCA, it's available online and it's definitely on the Hidden Horror Facebook page. Please check it out. But we're not going to go over the whole PCA today. So right here, we're starting on page 12. And it reads as follows. We go up a little bit more to the prior paragraph. It's pretty short. Okay. Right here. So this is Brett Payne's PCA. This was signed and dated on December 29th, 2022. Just to give you the time frame of this. So his mind would be really actively preparing and writing this PCA, and he signed and dated it December 29th, 2022. And it reads as follows. On December 23rd, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12th, 2022 at 12 a.m. So that was Saturday. And November 14th at 12 a.m. So that was Monday. So the records are going to cover Saturday at 12 a.m. to Monday, November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider AT&T approximately 24 hours preceding and following the times of the homicides. So Brett Payne requested a time frame of about 24 hours from the murders and about 24 hours after the alleged time of the murders, okay, for Bryan Kohberger's cell phone records, his data, okay? On December 23rd, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. So, was Cyree correct saying that the FBI has a different way, a separate way, because we already know the GLDC was not created until the next year. It wasn't up and running until June of 2023. Remember, the murders happened November 13th, 2022, allegedly, right? And this request is made December 23rd, 2022. So we know it's past that 7-day window. So how did they get the records? The GLDC was not even actively functioning where you go through AT&T and request it. So again, Cyree said in his affidavits, and you can read them. We're not going to read them now. But Cyree said in his affidavits that there was another way that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, had a way to go directly to the phone companies and get the records past that 7-day window. Didn't have anything to do with a second 7-day window. It was really because they're law enforcement and they have connection and they're doing a criminal investigation. They're going to provide more information, be more available, more flexible with the FBI. But again, he signed this affidavit and he said he received the records the same day. He requested them December 23rd, 2022, and he received the records for Bryan Kohberger's cell phone the same day. If Brett Payne doesn't have any experience, he doesn't even know how to write this search warrant. He's getting the words, the language from someone else that's providing additional support. Remember, this is a big murder case for the state of Idaho, and everybody's in, all hands on deck. What can we help you with? What resources can we get you that you wouldn't have access to? And that is that FBI special agent on site working in and at the Moscow Police Department. Brett Payne, Corporal Brett Payne, he was able to receive the records the same day. He signed this affidavit, and I believe him. I believe it. But let's continue. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to Bryan Kohberger at an address in Albright, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since. So let's go to page 13. June 23rd, 2022. Okay, it was open June 23rd, 2022. These records also included historical cell site location information, that's abbreviated CSLI, for the 8458 phone. So when he got the records, he also received historical cell site location information for that period, November 12th, 2022, 12 a.m., to and through November 14th, 2022. That's the Saturday to Monday. We're all on the same page because we're going for it, okay? He says, after receiving this information, so after receiving Bryan Kohberger's records from AT&T, he consulted with an FBI special agent that is certified as a member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, abbreviated CAST, CAST. This is a specialist that's going to be familiar with reviewing, making an analysis of the records, the data from AT&T, right? Members of CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI. So we know that's sales site location information, and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to be certified with CAS, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. Additionally, the FBI CAS special agent that I consulted with has over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From information provided by CAST, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November 12th, 2022 to November 13th, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. Why would Brett Payne lie? Why would he lie about what he did, how he did it, and who he worked with? There is absolutely somebody lying, but I do not think that it's Brett Payne. He signed this affidavit. He requested the search warrants. The search warrants were approved, right? They were approved. The records were provided to Brett Payne the same day. The same day. That's a real good connection to have those records provided the same day. Now we're going to jump down to page 16. Okay? Please follow along. Let's continue. On December 23rd, 2022, I was granted a search warrant for Kohberger's historical CSLI from June 23rd, 2022 to current. So remember, this was from June 23rd, 2022 to December 23rd, 2022, right? Prospective location information and a PIN register trap and trace on the 8458 phone. And why did they want the PIN register trap and trace? Because they're going to spell it out to you now, but I'm going to give you some extra information on it as well. But he says, to aid, right here, in efforts to determine if Kohberger stalked any of the victims. Did he stalk them? Did he follow them? Did he follow them on social media? Was he in the locations that they were in at the same time? Did he stalk any of the victims in this case prior to the offense? Did he stalk them prior to the murders? And now they have this window of time covering June 23rd, 2022 to December 23rd, 2022. Is there any evidence of stalking? Texting, calling, writing, emailing, following, showing up in the same location? Did he conduct surveillance on the King Road residence? Was he in contact with any of the victim's associates before or after the alleged offense? Any locations that may contain evidence of the murders that occurred on November 13th, 2022, and the location of the white Elantra registered to Kohberger, as well as the location of Kohberger. Where was Kohberger at? Where was his car that he owned that was registered to him? Where was the car at? They have a window, a period of about 6 months from June 23rd, 2022 to December 23rd, 2022. They're going to see his data, what he was doing, what he was writing, who he was calling, what he was looking up, what apps he was on. Next paragraph. On December 23rd, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received historical records for the 8458 phone from AT&T from the time the account was opened in June of 2022. That was June 23rd, 2022. After consulting with Cass, special agent, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from June 22 to present, the time period authorized by the court. He got the records. He got the records. He actually got them twice, covering that time frame of the murders. He got the records. I want to share something with you because I didn't know what the trap, let me say, I gotta say it again because I didn't know it's called a pin register trap and trace on Bryan Kohberger's 8458 number. Why would they ask for that? They asked for that between the period of June 23rd, 2022 up until December 23rd, 2022. Again, a pin register trap and trace. Well, what is it? We know what they wanted to use it for, right? They wanted to know if Bryan Kohberger conducted surveillance, if he stalked the victims, right? Was he around any of the victims? Did he have contact with them or their associates? If they had evidence against Bryan Kohberger, they would tell you. They would show you. They would demonstrate it. They would prove it. If he had contact with them, if he knew them, if he contacted them, if he stalked them, they would have evidence. I just did a video that told you if they had evidence. That means the state of Idaho or the FBI, because there is a federal interstate stalking law. If they had evidence as well as murder. But we're just talking about the stalking right now, but we can say stalking and or murder. If they had evidence of Bryan Kohberger stalking the victims, surveilling the victims, following the victims, watching the victims, contacting the victims, following them on social media, appearing where they are, contacting their friends, connecting with them on an app, they would show you and they would have charged him with stalking. Let's continue. This video is provided by Security First Corp. It's a little bit over 3 minutes. It's titled, What Are Trap and Trace Devices? You can check them out on securityfirstcorp.com. Let's go.
Security First Corp. Safety through knowledge. What are trap and trace devices?
If you've ever wondered how law enforcement tracks down the sources of suspicious phone calls or internet activity, you're about to find out. Let's dive into the world of trap and trace devices. Imagine you're receiving harassing phone calls or messages, and you need to identify who is behind them. This is where a trap and trace device comes into play. It's essentially a tool that helps law enforcement and phone companies track the sources of incoming signals to a specific phone or computer. Think of it as an advanced version of caller ID. While caller ID shows you the number of the person calling you, a trap and trace device records the phone numbers or internet addresses of all incoming signals. However, it doesn't capture the actual content of the calls or messages, just the information about who is making the calls. Here's how it works. When a trap and trace device is installed on a phone line or computer, it logs the details of every incoming call or message. This includes the phone number, internet address, and other identifying information. This data can be crucial in investigations, helping police identify potential suspects or gather evidence. For example, if the police suspect someone is involved in criminal activity, they might use a trap and trace device to monitor that person's phone or internet activity. The device will record all the incoming calls and messages, providing valuable information about who is in contact with the suspect. Unlike wiretaps, which require a higher level of authorization and capture the actual content of conversations, trap and trace devices are relatively easier to set up. They don't need a finding of probable cause, but rather a statement under oath that the device will likely produce information material to an ongoing investigation. The process of getting a trap and trace device involves an application that must identify the telephone subscriber, the relevant phone number, and the carrier. This application can be reviewed by a district court judge, and the device can be installed on an emergency basis if necessary. These devices are often used in conjunction with pen registers, which track outgoing calls. Together, they provide a comprehensive view of a person's communication activities. The data collected can be used to track down suspects, identify co-conspirators, and even locate people who are on the run. In summary, trap and trace devices are powerful tools that help law enforcement and phone companies identify the sources of incoming calls and messages. They are essential in various investigations and can be a key part of keeping communities safe. So next time you hear about these devices, you'll know exactly what they do and how they help in the fight against crime.
Geez, y'all. I'm so frustrated with this case. Let's move on. I want to go over the testimony of Brett Payne for May of 2024. So let's get to it. It's going to be about 20 minutes long. So frustrating. This testimony by Brett Payne was from the May 30th, 2024 hearing in front of Judge John Judge. It's provided by Docket Decoder, and we're going to start at about 8:20. We'll listen to about 20 minutes of the testimony. So let's get started with it.
On cell phone information and cell phone location information.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you work with cell phone records yourself?
No, ma'am.
Did you see cell phone records yourself?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
When was the first time you saw cell phone records that were attributed to Bryan Kohberger?
Do not remember what date that was.
Well, maybe you can give me an estimate. We know on the 20th, you're talking to WSU about an observation from a month before. And we know on December 23rd, you're asking for AT&T warrants for information. Can you narrow it down?
Yes.
Sorry, Judge.
That's a yes. You can, I just want to get the record. Yes.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
So between those 2 days, does that help you identify the first time you saw cell phone records related to Bryan Kohberger?
Memory serves, the first time I saw any cell phone records related to Bryan Kohberger was after we received the return from the first search warrant.
Just to be sure I'm tracking with you, when you say the return from the first search warrant, we're talking about the first AT&T warrant.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that right?
That's correct.
And in that warrant, you were seeking 48 hours worth of records, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if I call those the 48-hour records, we'll both be on the same page?
Yep.
All right. You wrote your second AT&T warrant for a much longer period of phone records that same day, December 23rd, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
How far ahead of that warrant did you see the records?
It would have been upon the receipt of the 48-hour records that came in from AT&T. Immediately after receiving those, I began writing that second section of the second AT&T warrant for the longer period. If that makes sense.
It does. So you get these records and you take a look at them and you start writing your warrant. Is that right?
The records were provided to FBI Special Agent Balance, who began deciphering them. I'm not an expert in cell phone records.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you.
So, no, ma'am, I'm not. So, he was the one who was conveying that information to me so I could understand what it was.
So do you get the records and then get them to him somehow?
Yes, ma'am.
The records do they go directly to Balance?
I do not recall what the distribution was on the return itself. I do not recall that.
Are you and Balance exchanging emails about these records?
No, ma'am, not that I remember.
How did you get them to them?
We were co-located. At the time, Detective Balance was at the Moscow Police Department about 30 feet down the hallway.
Are the two of you exchanging text messaging during this time?
I do not remember if you texted during that time.
I may have a record that would refresh your memory.
So I just want to pause it for a second. So everything that Brett Payne is testifying to is in direct connection, in line with what he put in his PCA on December 29, 2022. He requested the first set of records, he received them. He immediately asked for the first set of records were the 48-hour records. He received them, he immediately requested the longer length of time records from June 23rd, 2022 to present day, which would have been December 23rd, 2022. And he's testifying that Special Agent from the FBI, Balance, reviewed the records. Let's continue.
I'm certainly not seeking to have these admitted, but I'd like to hand him some records to see if we can refresh his memory.
His testimony is consistent, is my point. It's consistent with his PCA. I don't think he's lying. I think the state of Idaho, the prosecution is.
Do you recognize what's been placed in front of you?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Does reading the content of some December 23rd messages refresh your recollection about participating in text messages with Nicholas Balance?
It really does not, ma'am.
Will you look at, there's 3 separate stapled documents. Will you move that one and go to the next one?
Still on December 23rd?
Yeah.
I do vaguely remember that exchange, the one at the top of this second.
Is that the one that starts with you identifying yourself?
No, ma'am, it starts with the message says, group text for this weekend, Maria, Nick, Ed, Brett, and Darren.
You look at that third one.
Seems vaguely familiar.
Okay. So just so I'm clear then, Nick Balance is at Moscow Police Department when you're getting, on December 23rd, when you're getting these 2 warrants. Is that right?
If memory serves, that's correct.
Okay. Well, you told me that you're not the guy who understands how to interpret these records. Do you know anything about cell phone towers?
Very little, ma'am.
Okay. So when you wrote this second AT&T warrant, you have possession of Bryan Kohberger's call detail records or AT&T records, but you don't know what they mean, so you're relying on somebody else.
Yes, ma'am.
Who all did you rely on?
Mainly it was Special Agent Balance. He was my main point of contact for understanding what was going on.
Okay. In fact, in your affidavit for the second AT&T report, there's a couple of maps in there. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And one of them has some video camera information. That's the first map. Where did that come from?
I do not recall. If you have a copy of it, I can refresh my memory and tell you.
I bet I do. I have what we've marked defendants B.
Are you referring to there's two maps, the WSU focus map you're referring to? It's completely washed out on this copy. I can't even see what it is.
It's hard to see, isn't it? What I want to know is what you relied on to get that first one that talks about WSU and the cameras on WSU. Where'd you get that?
Yes, ma'am. So Special Agent Rob Hilley with the FBI was also co-located with us. He was tasked with analyzing that video from WSU and the surrounding area. So it was a conversation between he and I, pointing out areas of locations where the car was likely seen on surveillance footage. And that's what I relied upon to create that map.
So you created that map.
Through PowerPoint, I believe, ma'am, memory serves.
You saved your work on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go to the next map. That one would appear to be a trail or a path from south of Moscow back towards Lewiston or back towards Polk. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get that map?
Same thing. It was just created using open source satellite imagery, and I think it was PowerPoint.
Did you create that?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get the information to draw that trail?
So that was used from the cell phone records referred to me by Special Agent Balance on his interpretation of possible places where someone could have driven between the location that it starts there and then back to Poland.
So you did this on some open source mapping, not anything from Nick Balance creating a visual for you.
No, ma'am. I did view a draft report from Special Agent Balance to help me conceptualize this, but it did not look like this map.
Where's that draft report?
It is, best of my knowledge, it's already been provided to the prosecutor's office through the FBI channels.
Is this the lengthy past draft report or is it a different draft report?
Well, it would have to be the draft cast report. That's the only cast report I'm aware of from Special Agent Balance.
So on December 23rd, are you saying you looked at this past draft report to make that map that went into your affidavit to get the second set of records?
Yes, ma'am.
The one that was given to us in July of last year?
I don't know when you got it.
How many versions of that cast draft report have you seen?
I've only seen that one, ma'am. That's the only one I'm aware of.
All right.
And let me just say this too. Let me pause it for a second here. It's going to come out that the defense and Taylor has not received any AT&T records. Not any. Continue.
And from the FBI, we have Agent Balance and Agent Hilley at Moscow Police Department with you. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
and all of this work is done with verbal communication. Is that right?
The majority of it, yes, ma'am.
And Nick Balance's cast draft report.
Correct.
and I think Special Agent Imel's vehicle identification.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's talk about what you were seeking to get in this. Well, let me ask this before I leave the second search warrant. Is there anything else you relied on to obtain that second search warrant to compose your affidavit?
Like I said earlier, we relied on cell phone records from surviving roommates as well as the victims. We relied on interviews with the 2 surviving roommates that were present at the time. We relied on the surveillance footage, cell phone data. I'd have to go paragraph by paragraph, but that's what jumps to mind.
Of those things, are you relying on other people's work to put that all together?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'm ready to talk about the things that same day as the first one.
So this would mean that all of these people are lying. Brett Payne would have to be a liar to say he received these records. He's saying it in his testimony, but he also put it in his his PCA statement. And then the work that was done, that must be a lie as well, right? Because if they never received the records, how did all of these people work together to put this PCA together, to analyze the data from the records? I don't think they're lying. I think it is the prosecution, the state of Idaho, that is lying. But let's continue.
And there's, was there anything else from AT&T that you saw or relied on to get the second one off the ground?
No, ma'am.
And in the first AT&T search warrant, are you aware that part of the request was for timing advance reports?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, that also appears in your second search warrant request, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And not only do you ask for the timing advance reports from AT&T, you asked for them from several other companies, correct? Verizon's version of it, T-Mobile's version of this kind of timing advance report. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When was the first time you saw AT&T's timing advance report?
I do not recall when I first saw it.
Where is it?
To the best of my knowledge, all of that information from those returns has been provided to the prosecutor's office.
So right there, he says, all of the records, all of the data were provided to the prosecutor's office, to his knowledge.
If I tell you I don't have a timing advance report or any from the other phone companies, where do I look for that?
I would direct you back to the prosecutor's office. Everything that Moscow PD received, we, in that realm, we have turned over to my knowledge.
But you know you've seen this report, is that right?
I do not recall if I've seen the timing advance reports. I'd have to see what it even looked like to know if I'd seen it.
Do you know what it is?
Not particularly. I'm no expert.
Okay, you wrote the search warrant though, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, how did you get the language for that if you don't know what this is?
So there's no secret that I rely heavily on people who are very highly educated in these topic areas to write this search warrant. So that language was likely conveyed to me through people who know much more than myself about cell phone data.
Who are those people?
Like I said, FBI agent Balance and Detective Mowry were probably my 2 main points of contact for helping me with that language.
And this is why Attorney Ann Taylor has to depose Special Agent Balance and possibly potentially others. Because Brett Payne is being forthcoming, saying he wouldn't even know what these records look like, even if he saw them. He requested them, he received them, and all of these records were analyzed, reviewed, turned over to Special Agent Balance. She has to depose him. Let's continue.
During the course of your investigation and work on the case that became the case that we're here for now, did you communicate with Agent Balance by email?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you communicate with other FBI agents by email?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that relate to the investigation of the scene and later the investigation of Bryan Kohberger?
Certainly, yes, ma'am.
Were those communications that assisted you in preparing affidavits and search warrants to carry out your duties in the case?
I do not recall.
But you recall the emails themselves.
I recall sending emails to FBI agents, yes, but
And-
specific stuff.
And receiving them?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are those emails now?
All emails that Moscow PD is aware of have been turned over to the prosecutor's office.
Your Honor, if I could have just a minute.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for now, but I think you have a couple of exhibits on that front end. If you don't need them for us, maybe I'll take them back.
Well, hold on. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I'll.
Yes, okay. I thought you were just stepping off, so.
We have about 5 more minutes with this one. And then we're going to go to the April 9th, 2025 hearing.
Morning.
Good work.
To your knowledge, have all the evidence in Moscow Police Department's possession been turned over to the state for us to discover?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you facilitated the defense visiting MPD to review the physical evidence in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how many times have you done that?
I had to guess, I'd say 6.
Now, let's talk specifically about this video surveillance. Explain to me the process for collecting video surveillance.
So in this investigation, the way that played out was we directed the investigators to go into the community and collect any available surveillance footage there was. Once they had done that, they were tasked with bringing it back to Moscow Police Department, placing it in the digital forensics lab, and then writing a supplemental report on where they collected that information. That was the process.
Do you know how many agencies helped in this video canvas?
Certainly the FBI and the Idaho State Police. I'm not sure if any other agencies helped. I don't know.
Do you know approximately how many agents were out collecting video?
Easily over a dozen. I don't know the specific number, but
Isn't it true that investigators collected video surveillance from approximately 79 businesses
yes, ma'am.
and approximately 10 residences? So let's talk about the areas that Ms. Taylor mentioned. Isn't it true that there's other surveillance video capturing the Moscow Pullman Highway, specifically on the way to Pullman?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true we've turned over video for banks
Yes,
on
ma'am.
that highway? Isn't it true we've turned over surveillance for stores on that highway?
Yes,
Isn't it true we've turned over video for gas stations?
yes,
Now let's talk about the Troy Highway towards Troy. Isn't it true we've turned over surveillance video for fast food restaurants,
yes,
gas stations?
yes,
And now US 95 towards Coeur d'Alene. Isn't it true we've turned over surveillance video for hardware stores,
yes,
gas stations?
yes,
Now, what about US 95 towards Lewiston? Isn't it true we've turned over surveillance video for gas stations,
yes,
as well as apartments?
yes.
Now let's move to your PC affidavit. Can you explain to me what did the investigation look like during the time that you were writing that affidavit?
So as I said, the command center was established at the Moscow Police Department. The command center consisted of myself and numerous partners from the FBI and the Idaho State Police. We were all co-located there at Moscow. We also had individual sections assigned to do various tasks, collect video, conduct interviews, so on and so forth. The majority of those people were also co-located at the Moscow Police Department. So as the process for developing this affidavit began, those people would just come into the command center and relay information that was deemed to be critical or important. The reason for that was to shorten the chain of information to make sure that the folks, myself and my partners in the command post, got the clearest view of what the investigators on the ground were actually retrieving and learning as this went on. As they relay that to me, I input that into the affidavit.
And is that standard to rely on what other investigators tell you when you're applying for warrants?
Absolutely.
And is that what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
And is what you relied upon detailed in your probable cause affidavit?
Yes.
Now, talking about the timing advance records, are you aware that AT&T didn't provide timing advance records in December of 2022?
I do not remember.
If that is true, why did he put in the PCA that he received them both times? Why did he put that?
Are you aware that they did not start providing those records until May of 2023?
Objection, lady.
Cross-examination.
It
She's
is.
referring to what she's asking about is the GLDC and how they started in June of 2023 providing the records. But we already know that there was another way. Cyray revealed that, and we know that through the search warrant request that Brett Payne did, he received the records from AT&T the same day, both times. Why would he lie about that? I don't think so. But let's continue.
Go ahead.
I'll re-ask. Are you aware that AT&T did not start providing those records until May of 2023?
Yes.
I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor?
Thanks. Let's start there. May of 2023. Do you have timing advance records now from May of 2023?
I would have to direct you to Detective Mallory to answer that question. Don't know.
Okay. Did you write a new warrant for them in May of 2023?
I do not recall.
If you included them in two separate warrants in December of 2022, but they didn't provide them, why would you do that?
It was the language that was suggested to me to write the affidavit. So
Language suggested by an FBI agent who's an expert in the field?
it's me.
Yes. And do you know if he saw the timing advance reports?
I do not know.
All right.
And right here, this is where you ask to depose FBI agent Balance. Right here. This is where you have to go to the source of who analyzed the records that came in, that would be aware, familiar with the data and records from AT&T.
Now, those first and second AT&T warrants were how many hours from receiving the return on the first one until the second one was given to Judge Marshall at 4:45?
I do not remember.
Not very many hours, though. Would that be fair?
Likely
This
not.
was the same day.
I want to talk a little bit more about the video and what's been turned over and what hasn't been turned over.
Okay, so we'll stop there with this one. Okay, everybody. So we're going to go over one more video. And we got about it's probably about 15, 20 minutes. I can't remember. But this is the April 9th, 2025 hearing where the same issue is brought up again. Let's get to it. Let me pull the video up. So just give me 1 second. Okay, so let me go to our time. We're going in about 5 hours, 25 minutes in, okay? So let me share my screen. Now, this hearing again was in front of Judge Hippler. It was the May 9th, 2025, the April 9th, 2025 hearing. This video is provided by Fox 13 Seattle. It's titled Live, Bryan Kohberger in Court for Hearing on Evidence He Wants Thrown Out in Idaho Murders Case. Okay, so let's enlarge this and let's get this one started. I hope this is helpful to
Let's
you.
talk about the AT&T stuff.
Thank you, Judge. This should be fairly simple. The state seeking an order prohibiting the defense from continuing to allege that the state received timing advance records from AT&T for Mr. Kohberger's
When you
phone.
say continuing to allege, I'm assuming you mean in front of a jury.
Now, again, I understand her position, but we also have to go back to the affidavit of Brett Payne that we've already reviewed, where he says he received these records. He signed an affidavit to it, and he worked alongside and with Special Agent Balance, among other people from the FBI. So this is not something that the defense is trying to assert. This is something that is disclosed to them in Brett Payne's affidavit. So they have a reason why they keep asking for the AT&T records of Bryan Kohberger, which they have never received any records. Okay, but let's watch it play out.
Yes, what we don't want, throughout the entirety of this case, they've alleged that. We're seeking to prohibit them from making that same allegation in front of a jury because it's false. Timing advance records, really timing is what's at issue. And in 2022, the days that we're concerned about are 7 days. The event that we wanted records for was obviously November 13th. So in 2022, we had 7 days from November 13th to get AT&T timing advance records for anyone's phone. We did do search warrants for other people's phones. We did a tower dump, and we did a search warrant for 3 individuals. Those were all done on November 16th within that 7-day period. So the state did receive some timing advance records. However, by the time that Mr. Kohberger was identified in December 19th, and by the time we applied for a search warrant for his AT&T records, we were outside of that 7-day window. So there were no timing advance records to be received, and we did not receive any. The state has submitted an affidavit from Stephen Gordon, the AT&T Director of Compliance, essentially stating that we sought timing advance records, but they were not included because more than 7 days elapsed since November 13th, 2022, and the date of the search warrant, December 23rd, 2022.
Okay, well, if that is true, and this is where we have to go back to the PCA of Brett Payne. And I believe it starts about, let me get it right. About page 13. Let me show you his PCA, and we're going to go back. So we're going to go back a little bit to just highlight something where this is where I'm having a hard time. She's saying that they did not get the records. But when you read through Brett Payne's PCA, and I'm on page 13, it says these records include a historical sales site location information for Bryan Kohberger's 8458 phone. Now he's consulting with Special Agent. He don't say Balance here, but primarily Balance here. But if we drop down and we go to the next paragraph, it starts to tell us the information regarding Bryan Kohberger's whereabouts, his travel, and they're using his cell phone data. They're saying at approximately 2:42 a.m. The 845 phone, how would they know that from the date of November 13th, 2022, if they were not able to obtain his records? Again, you drop down in the paragraph at approximately 2:47 a.m., the 845 phone stops reporting to the network. How do they know this information if they didn't get the records? If we go on and continue and go to the next page, they're going to continue talking about the habits, where he was at, the timing, his location data. Well, if they never got the records for November 13th, how would they know that information? They're using his cellular data. So it does not make sense to me. But let's go back. Go back to Hippler's hearing and continue. So if that is true, that is a fact, how do you have this data from Bryan Kohberger's 845 cell phone where you're able to create routes, you're able to display what time, what location he was at? How would you know that? Where would you get that from? How? From the records. You're saying in the affidavit of Brett Payne, but that this cellular data is from the records that were reviewed. It doesn't make sense to me. Someone is lying. Moreover, they didn't provide the defense with any of the AT&T records, but someone's lying. You can't have it disclosed in the PCA with very detailed accounts and times and locations and referring to it as you got this from the cellular records, from the network, right? From AT&T, but then you're in court saying you never received it. And this is the time frame where you're saying you didn't receive it. Doesn't make sense to me. If someone knows, please explain this to me. Please. That's why I'm leaning more to believe that Cyray is right, that they have these records and they've had the records since December 23rd of 2022. They just failed to provide them. I want to know why. I'm curious why. What is in these records? Is there anything there? Let's continue. But isn't Brett Payne's PCA with the detailed accounts, the detailed history of Bryan Kohberger's movements on the phone? This is the same information that was used to help in the grand jury process, right? The same information from the PCA is used to proceed with criminal charges against Bryan Kohberger. But now, as we move fast forward in the case, now they don't have any of these records, that they never received them. I just don't understand what's going on. I don't. I don't get it. And I just feel like something is not right here. But let's continue. And see, that's the thing. The GLDC, that whole conversation about them is not relevant. That is not what's going on or even needs to be addressed. What needs to be addressed specifically is, did special agent from the FBI balance use his reach, his resources, his connections to obtain and quickly these search warrants returned the same day? Did he use his access to get the records? The 7 days are not relevant. It's not relevant. Ugh. You need to depose Biden. She doesn't know. Right here, and Taylor needs to focus in on Brett Payne's PCA. What he put in the PCA and the information contained about the route, Bryan Kohberger's whereabouts, the timing. Where did all of that come from if they did not receive those records? Where did it come from? How did they recreate the time and location data? How? And you know what? Let's think about it logically here. Why would they put in a second request for all of Bryan Kohberger's records covering the period where he initially got the AT&T phone, which was June 23rd, 2022, if they weren't able to even get a 48-hour window for the date of November 12th, 2022 to November 14th, 2022? Why would they ask for even more extended period of time if they didn't get the first request? That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. She's just not stating it in a way that describes what happened. And she may not understand, just like I didn't understand. I keep going back to this over and over again. Why put in a second request if you didn't get the first request fulfilled? I think he got it fulfilled. He said he received the AT&T records, and then he even went back and asked for records to cover a longer period of time, a more extended period of time, from the time Bryan Kohberger got the AT&T service, which was June 23rd, 2022. Oh, he's not going to do that. And see, this is the thing that kills me. He acts like before June 2023, what do you think they were doing? There was a procedure in place prior to this June 2023 start. So you have to imagine that people have been doing crimes for all of this time. There was a process. Do you think it was not a process before June 2023? We know there had to be a process prior to that because this case, unfortunately, the murders happened allegedly November 13th, 2022. There was something in place happening before that. And it's like, I don't understand why he's stuck on the 7 days when the 7 days is not relevant. is not relevant to this case. And she has to go back, and Taylor, the defense, have to go back to Brett Payne's own PCA, and they have to depose FBI Special Agent Balance. I don't see how else you get to what you need to know without that. Let's continue. What he's saying is not completely true. Cyril did say that he can disclose more names, but he didn't want to put them in the affidavit. So if he had needed more details, he probably would want to tell him directly because he didn't want to disclose any type of information, specifically names of contacts. Then they have to explain, where did all this information come from the PCA of Brett Payne, where he's referring to his work with the CAS team and specifically a special agent, which we now know is Balance. Where did all of this information come from? How did they obtain what records, what information to put this together, to put this PCA together? And see how simple it is? Depose special agent from the FBI Balance. Asked him specifically relating to this case, these records from AT&T on the 8458 phone. Did you obtain those records through the search warrants that were requested? Did you review them? Were these a part of your analysis? Can you provide them to me if you have them? Simple. And to me, it should not be at the time of trial, because if those records exist or existed, or he still has them or maintains them, at the time of the trial, this gives her very little time to do something about the records. Review them, analyze them, turn them over to Cyril for preparation. It should be done now. Well, that doesn't satisfy me. Still problematic in my eyes. It's still something that she needs to get the information on. So please let me know, what do you think? What's your opinion? Thank you for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I want you to stay smart, stay safe, stay savvy, be well, all my friends. Bye, everybody.